Hello and welcome back. I am your book reviewer, and tonight we're going to review the book Gerald's Game by Stephen King. Um, I have read this before, but I hadn't done a review on it, so I thought this would be interesting. After my last book, I was kind of in the mood for a scary book, and I guess kind of a gross book, because that's what these both are. And I don't know if it's because it's close to Halloween or just in the mood for it. And again, as I said before, I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and I've read this book before, as I said, and it was a good read, so I thought, okay, I'll read it again and review it. It's about a couple whose names are Gerald, obviously, and his wife Jessie Burlingame is their last name. They've been married for just shy of 20 years, I guess. It doesn't really give an actual number, but I'm guessing like 17, 18 years. And Gerald is a corporate lawyer, I think, and Jessie, I think, is a housewife. She's not a mother, so I was going to say she's a stay-at-home mom, but that's not true. And the book starts with Gerald having this kinky idea that they should go to their lake house in it's like Lake Kashamawak or something. It's an odd name. Um, that's in Western Maine, and they were going to play a sex game. And where the sex game involves Jessie being handcuffed to a bed. So at first Jessie's like, okay, let's go with it. But when they get there, and the opening book is actually when the handcuffs are just laid on her, and she's now handcuffed to this bed, wearing nothing but underwear. She's now realizing that this is stupid. She doesn't want to do this anymore. And so she starts to tell Gerald, I don't want to do this anymore. Can you please take the handcuffs off? And unfortunately, he does not respond. He just kind of grins at her and tries to start this sex game. And she pleads with him, no, we can still have sex just the regular way. I need you to take these off me. This is not fun anymore. And she becomes very, very persistent as he starts this game up. She becomes very, very persistent, and she's like, no, I need you to take these off me. Take these off now. And he doesn't, and he climbs up on top of her, and and I think he was drooling, and I think it landed on her navel or something. So, and that caused a kind of spastic reaction in her where she gives him two swift kicks, one to the stomach and one to the groin area, where he kind of doubles back, and she's like, because he's kind of grasping at his chest and his arm, and he's kind of gasping and coughing, and she's like, what's wrong? Are you all right? Are you okay? What happened? And all he says is heart, and falls to the ground. So she realizes that he had a heart attack. Gerald has now had a heart attack and has died, and Jessie is still handcuffed to the bed. Thus ends chapter 1 of this book. The rest of the book is Jessie being handcuffed to this bed and figuring out how she's going to get out. So, and nobody knows where they are, so there's really no contact thought of, who can I think of that would come and get me. And so unfortunately, with her being the only, I guess, human in the world or in this area, because this is or she starts to think, and she starts to have thoughts, and they are not all very good. She starts to develop voices in her head, really kind of three that two that are definitely recognized, and one is a UFO voice, as she calls it. One is kind of a good voice that she calls the Good Wife Burlingame, where she is kind of soft spoken and kind of like, well, we have to kind of get out of this. It has to be good, and we have to think of sensible ways to get out. And then there's another one that she identifies as a voice belonging to an old college roommate of hers whose name was Ruth Neary, who is definitely like, you're screwed. You got to face reality that you're stuck here. And she's very gruff, and Jessie does not like to hear this voice, and she often tells it to shut up, and using sorts of profanity and expletives that I will not repeat. So anyway, she does hear things. Also, she hears a man with a chainsaw, but that's miles away, that she thinks, so he's no hope. But then she starts to hear this dog bark, and she's kind of scared by it. And one of the things that also she hears is the back door banging. They didn't close the back door, and I guess it's very windy where she is, so it was banging, and she becomes annoyed with it. But throughout the ordeal, and after a couple of hours, she doesn't hear it anymore, but yet she hears the clacking of dog paws. So she realizes that the dog is in her house. And so she yells at it to go away, but the dog is a stray, and his name was Prince, is Prince, but since he's a stray, Stephen King calls it Former Prince, which I thought was kind of funny because of the singer. And Prince, again being a stray, is very hungry, so he starts to eat Gerald, which is one of the gross aspects of this book. And she's very sick by this. And of course, Gerald is kind of in her line of vision, so she sees this happening. So again, that's also really gross. Also, the dog, she does get the dog away. I was trying to visualize this bed. She's handcuffed to, I guess, bedposts, but there's like a shelf on top of her headboard that has accoutrements and things like that. One of the things and she's able to she's able to get her hand up and find the things. One of the things she finds is an ashtray that she whips at the dog that gets it to go away. But another one she finds, thankfully, is a drinking glass, and because she's there for several hours and realizes she's thirsty. So before they began this game, Gerald poured himself a glass of water and set it up there on the shelf. So she does, in kind of a genius thing, because she's able to get the glass, but unfortunately, because of the handcuffs, she's not able to kind of tip it and drink out of it. But she makes herself a makeshift straw, which I thought was genius, and manages to drink it. So at least the thirst aspect for a while is sufficient. And she kind of drifts in and out of sleep, and she's thinking again, like I said, and she starts to think back to a day in, I think the date is July 20th, 1963, and where she's remembering her childhood. She was 10 years old then, and she's remembering on that day there was a full solar eclipse, and she was with her family in another kind of family house, not in this lake, but at another lake called Dark Score Lake. And she's there with her mom, her dad, her brother, and her sister. And her mom, brother, and sister leave to go see the eclipse at another location, and she and her dad stay behind. And it was kind of her dad's idea, and she was really fond of her father, so she was like, oh, yay, I can spend the day with daddy, type of thing. However, she and her dad are watching the eclipse, and she's in kind of a sundress, and she sits on her father's lap, and she realizes that she starts to feel something bumpy underneath her father and realizes that her father basically has an erection, which is very gross. And so she's reliving a time in her life where her father molests her. It took a long time out of this book to get through that part. It kind of went in and out of the things that happened in Jesse's life, or in Jesse's ordeal, handcuffed to this bed. But that's eventually what happened. She does find herself reliving this moment, this horrifying experience in her life that she's kept hidden in her mind, and because of the situation that she's in, it finally resurfaced, and she was able to remember it and recollect it. And also through this ordeal, she kind of drifts in and out of sleep, and she wakes up in the wee hours of the morning, and she thinks she sees a man standing aside from in her bed looking at her, and she thinks, oh my gosh, is he real, or is this a figment of my imagination? I'm not going to give that up, whether he was real or not, so let you read it if you want to. She does escape, and again, that's another gross aspect which I won't share with you because I want you to read this book. So I thought it was good. Again, very scary, very gross. His books kind of fall in kind of categories of like scary, gross, scary and gross, and then not scary, not gross. This was one of those scary and gross ones. But I enjoyed it. I recommend it for anybody that likes him and hasn't read him or hasn't read that book yet and wants to, so yay. My next book was actually a recommendation from a friend of mine today. I was talking with her today, and she had suggested that I read The Great Gatsby, which I haven't read yet, so that'll be my next book. And I bid you all a good night and happy reading.